I'm just waiting for people to fill into the room. So coming from the waiting area into the people. Well, good evening, all. Welcome to another Innovis webinar. Want to meet the breeding partners or meet the farmers tonight. So, as most of us know, business is everything we do really revolves around people. And we're very, very fortunate in Innovis to have some great staff, both within the business employed and working with the business as breeding partners. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do really without these great people that we work with. So it's a delight tonight to have two of them. Two individuals that work like mad normally, busy in their own farming businesses and their own journeys. And we align with these sorts of people to try and create a future for us all at the same time. So we're very glad to have Thomas Hartley with us and Sam Edwards. Probably been up on the hills or outside all day doing stuff. So probably not even have their tea yet, I suspect. So we'll try and keep it as concise as possible. For you at home, you can relax. We can see you, so you can do whatever you want. So I'm sure some of you are having your tea, having a brew, some with feet up. But yeah, please, we'll start now. The webinar is being recorded because we have quite a few people that can't make it that want it further on. So you'll see at the bottom of your screens there is a Q&A box there. If you have questions, feel free to tap them in there. We will do our utmost to give them to the panelists, or we'll answer them ourselves. So make sure we cover everything. There are no bad questions or silly questions. We will consider them all. And what we'll do just to get the flow working is we'll ask Thomas to go and present his farming system to us and their journey and what they're about. And we'll then pose some questions to Thomas before we move on to Sam afterwards. So if you don't get questions answered straight away, we will be coming to them, be assured. We won't be leaving you high and dry. So, and on that note, I think, Thomas, we'll pass over to you to start us off this evening, if that's okay.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm Thomas Hartley, part of a family-run farm here in Lancashire, roughly. There's me, my sister, and mum and dad all work together, along with my girlfriend and Izzy's boyfriend as well. It's just a family-run farm. So they're all working together and working towards the future. Please can I have the next slide, please. Yeah, so I say based here in Pendle, Lancashire, about 10 minutes away from Gisborne, running about 500 acres of land, 400 just over 400 owned and 100 rented, on FBTs, if I can possibly try and not do the short-term lets. We have a 600-acre common running on the fell, runs up to 1,800 feet. We don't actually run any stock on this. It's a shared it's a shared common between three of us in the village, but only one person puts the stock on it, which is sort of like easier management for us all, not having to mess about crossing sheep over, and a bit of the health-wise as well. So we're running about 800 commercial sheep, all on a grass-based forage system, changed from the mules and texels and horned sheep as well. We've changed it all around and then gone to the composites, basically. Started with Logie Durno, much to Dewi's Dewi's happiness. Went to Logie in 2019, came back with 6 tups. Didn't buy any females in and basically bred from what we had on the farm to keep the door shut, basically. Buying 2 Frontierers, which is like the Innovis Aberfield, and 4 Logies, as well as some textile, recorded textiles that I was buying locally. We kept them going onto the mules to produce another female. So we crossed all these over the sheep that we had on the farm and been breeding them from there basically since. Um, so now to date, with 200 ewes in the Aberglan program for Innovis. This has been a going thing for 3 years now. So they're really seeing the effect now of the shedding gene coming through, and the ease of management basically with them. And then between us, we run a small herd of pedigree British Blue cattle. Mum and Dad have been doing that for 29 years. And they're still here today, just running alongside the rest of the business. Next slide. So yeah, a bit about me. I finished college in 2017. I went to Askham Bryan for 2 years, studied ag. From leaving school, I hated sheep when I was at school. So went to college and stayed away, 4 days a week and came back three. A really good experience, like eye-opening, looking around different farms, looking around different systems. And yeah, really, really good 2 years of my life. I really wanted to go to New Zealand, but whilst I was at college, there was a small farm came available on the market down the road from where we are now, and we sort of like stepped the game and we did buy that farm, which is where I live at the minute. So that was a bit of a ball rolling and a game changer, but we just had to dig in and get it bought. It was between two pieces of land, so it was a bit of a no-brainer, really. So that was when I was finishing college. I also worked away when I finished college. From one of my good friends, he lost his dad when he was 22, so I worked on a dairy farm for 2 years when I finished college, as well as working at home. Like I say, the traditional system, we had lonk ewes, and then we took them with the Leicester to produce the lonk mule, and then to the Texel, and then the Texel out of the mule, tupping them again with the Beltex. So we was running sort of like four different types of sheep and producing 4 or 5 different types of lamb. And we really wanted to change that and have a more consistent sale run of lambs, not messing about with 5 different types of lamb in the market. So we really looked at that to change and produce lambs that are consistent and selling in bigger groups, basically. So the change from that was using performance recorded textiles, which was buying locally, and then, like I say, going to Logie Durno, and that really changed the system that was running. And then now using Innovis Aberfield SRs, we've used the Highlander for 2 years now, and also the Aberglans, but the majority of the flock is Aberfield SR crosses now, and they're doing a really good job. Next one, please. So the aim when we started 2019, the aim was to produce females that will lamb outside. We was running about 500 sheep that was lambing inside. We put a building up for lambing inside as well at the farm that we bought. But we only did 1 year lambing inside and and thought we can't do this again. So we're aiming to breed that female that'll lamb outside, do everything off grass. We've reduced over the last 5 years. We've gone from feeding quite a lot of concentrate when we was running the mules and the lonks and stuff. And then last year we got down to nothing at all, which was a massive game changer. We got to lambing just short of 1,000, and we didn't feed any concentrate at all. And then also to produce the lambs off grass. So the 1st of September, we take a farm next door. They have a small herd of suckler cows, but they do most of their ground goes into bales, which then they sell on. So from the 1st of September, we have that farm until sort of like now. We came off there last week. So we're aiming to finish most lambs off grass, although this time we have put some inside, trying to catch a little bit of the trade of the Ramadan festival that is coming up. But for the last for the last 2 years, whilst we've had that wintering spot, everything has gone off grass, whether it be off our own farm or the farm next door, which is it's only a mile and a half away. Um, why did we change? And why did we look into this system? I would say now with the sheep that we're running are slightly smaller, so we've slightly more sheep on, and make a more manageable system. Most of the time, there's just me and my dad. And through the lambing time, of sort of like lambing thick end of 1,000 sheep, two of us, well, it's me and dad, and then mum and Izzy and my girlfriend. They do the problem side of it, but two of us can run the outdoor lambing system very easily, as well as doing other jobs as well, and also more profitable, um, having less costs going into them. We've sort of spread our costs from buying concentrates and all the other stuff that goes along with a traditional system, and been investing that money in the land, basically, in the soil, um, and a lot of infrastructure on farm. Next one. So yeah, the farm that we took down the road, along with a lot of other land that we take, is just very much simply run, basically. Not a lot of boundaries in it. The old existing boundaries are all there, dikes and old hedgerows and stuff like that, but no fences in sight. The last 5 years, I've done just over 20,000 meters of permanent fencing, along with just short of 50,000 trees into hedge plants. And then just at the moment, we're just on another scheme, a further 6,000 meters of permanent and 15,000 trees to go in the ground. Really just trying to divide pieces of ground up, instead of using electric all the time, basically. And it does help a lot at lambing time with shelter. Some of the pieces that we have are really exposed, so the more shelter that we can put in that is sort of like there all the time, makes it a lot more enjoyable in lambing time, not picking lambs out of dikes and frozen lambs, basically, which is a lot to do with the sheep as well, picking the right spot to lamb in. But the more we can work together, the more sort of like, well, the less death you have, basically, at lambing time. A lot on soil analysis, putting lime on. We've put quite a bit over 1,000 ton of lime on the farm, along with contracting as well. We was getting a contractor to do it, but the price of lime was climbing that hard. We bought our own spreader, and then also on a localized grant scheme, we bought the direct drill, which is a Gutler Greenmaster, and also going contracting with that locally, up to like 15, 16 miles away in a circle, basically. A lot of that work is back end work, uh, sort of like after silage and stuff like that, and also drilling. There's quite a few people now. I've been drilling roots for 4 years, and people have got onto drilling roots as well, direct into grass without any ploughing. So it's a small contracting business with that, as well as a little bit of round bale and wrapping that we do. The system, we went from lambing on the 1st of April, when we were lambing inside. So we kicked back a fortnight, lambing from the 15th, the main of the ewes lamb in 17 days, and then we start with a few hogs, just during May. Next one, please. So yeah, 15th of April lambing, ewes scanning around 160%. Do want to increase that. Partly what I do think is we've been running a lot of young sheep in the flock, trying to change the structure of the sheep basically as fast as we can. drafting as many old sheep, and we've been drafting down to two crop sheep to try and move them as fast and bring new genetics into the flock. So hopefully this will start building now, trying to get that percentage up. But some of the land that we're running, you don't really want any more than 1.5 lambs per ewe. Some of it is quite rough and moderate, and we can't do anything with it basically because it is that rough. And then the 1st of May, lambing hogs, the 180 ewe lambs last year scanned at 90%, so that's happy enough with me. All them ewe lambs was wintered at home, so they were sort of like wintered at 900 feet. So they didn't have an easy winter, but it's all a challenge basically. And I think from when we started challenging the sheep, it has made them a hardier sort of sheep, and they can stand it more. So we clip all the lambs in September, everything on the farm, basically, everything that goes away to get fattened, and all the ewe lambs all get sheared. I shear them all myself, basically, and another lad that works with me part-time. But we shear everything. We think everything does better when they go away to winter. They can be the most rubbish day you can have, and you get an hour of dry weather, and they shake off and they're dry and back grazing again. So we really clicked onto that. We've done that for 5 years now, and really like the system of it. It's a little bit of work in September when we're spaying, but we like that way of doing. So 2024 fat lambs also live weight through the market. We don't sell anything dead weight. So up to this date, 587 lambs to date, £128 and 6 pence, which is around 315 pence. They're from basically August to now, and we've quite a few left at the minute. Next one. So the Aberglans, why did we change? How did Dewi convince me to have shedders? Looked at them. Dewi came with the opportunity to do it. I didn't really like it because of the wool shedding, and the more time has gone on, a lot easier management. So the picture there is the top 10 pen of Aberglans that we had in our home sale. As you can see, they're all opening their necks and their legs. They haven't fully shed, but we was moving hogs at wintering yesterday, and there was all the briskets had gone, and they were starting to lose all the bellies and everything. So hopefully, as shearings, and another year through the program, we'll see that a lot more. Why we've done it basically, like we said earlier on, the ease of management with them. For one, there's less, there's less shearing. Two, the fly strike side of it, so a lot less chemical going onto the sheep, which is healthier, obviously, for them. And tailing back end, crutching out for tupping and stuff like that, which we do to keep stuff clean. Just the ease of management really with them. I'm quite impressed with them. We got some nucleus ewes came last year. They went straight onto our spot, and then they wintered just short of 1,000 feet. And I couldn't believe for the winter that we had last year and how wet our farm was, how much flesh that they carried through. I was quite surprised, really. So hopefully breeding it into them, we always say that stuff on the farm is better than buying stuff in, and do better. So hopefully going forward, they should be better. The ewe weight, pre-tupping, 64.5 kilo, which is where we aim to be. Some of the Texel ewes that we used to run was running at like 90 kilos. And then when one of them comes having a single, it's a bit hard work because it's just a big ewe not doing its body weight in lamb basically. So the 64 kilos of ewe weight, going to the 8-week weight of 26 isn't too far off being efficient, but we need to work on that as well. Next one, please. So these are the Aberglans that was just the other day. So they're just on some roots. we've been growing roots now. This is the fifth year. I've had four fairly good years, and then this year's been really poor. It was a poor field, but it's just the weather that we had in the back end. Since I drilled, it was drier the other day in that field than what it was when I put the fertilizer on it to grow the crop, which is quite a contrast from July to February. So the bales was put out in July when it was drilled, and now I'm just moving the electric fence for them every day. There's just short of 215 in that packet. There's about 10 acres there, which should do them for another month forward from now. Next one. There's another picture. So you don't usually drive around a field on our farm in a car in February. You usually have to walk around. So yeah, they use it in the crop. Like I say, it's quite a good piece, is that where I took the photo. Obviously, you like taking good photos where it's good. But yeah, the crop itself's not too bad. There's turnips there underneath and Swedes. But yeah, like I said, it's, when I first started doing this, sort of like everybody around me was so negative about it, saying, "Oh, you'll never make this work. You'll never get that, and this and that and the other." And there has been days where you've been stuck round a ring feeder, losing your wellies nearly because it's that boggy. But some days, when you get a day like this, it does make it sort of like worthwhile, and you think you are proving a point. Um, but yeah, just quite an old generation that is around our area, and didn't really like the idea of change. But we've done it, and we're trying to prove a point, and it is working. So the field that these are in May, we'll go in and probably rototill it, just lightly till it and reseed it, which I'm pretty sure there's nobody else in around this area in May doing any reseeds. So we're working. Next one. So yeah, last year, the 15th of September, 18th of September, we had our first sale at home. Um, yeah, quite a game changer really, and a lot of pressure on the day and the build up to it. I didn't know whether it was going to work, but Dewi assured me that it was. So 300 females we put forward into the sale. We had the sale at home on farm, which was a lot of prep work and a lot of cleaning and tidying, but we got there eventually. And 30 tups from Innovis came as well into the sale. We had full clearance throughout. Um, Hopefully, sort of going to try and grow the tup numbers throughout that sale and get some more tups into local customers. Because they're sort of seeing what we're doing and trying to move that forward. So there was four crop draft ewes in the sale. They averaged £156.75. The shearlings was 224 and the ewe lambs was 140. So there was um the ewe lambs was fairly newly speined and the ewes as well. With it being September, we don't usually wean until the last week of August, because we try and do two cuts of silo. So from lambing in April, the end of April, into May, we're trying to do the two cuts within 30 days of closing the meadows up. So as you can imagine, 60 days after that and regrowth, we're trying to, there is quite a bit of pressure on. But no, we did it and had a successful sale, and hopefully it'll grow on Innovis's behalf, and selling the tups. So that was that. Thank you. Next one. So yeah, 2025. We haven't pregnancy scanned yet. We've just some new lambs away this time, which are in lamb. So they'll be coming back next week, and then we will scan. Um, uh, so, oh yeah, this time, um, so this lambing time, I have my first Aberglan shearlings coming through. Some of them land as hogs and have done really well. So yeah, they're coming through now into the flock, so be able to put a bit more recording into them and hopefully breed some more tups for Dewi. And then yeah, the second sale, we've already booked it in. So the 17th of September, 2025. We will be having another sale on farm of the female selection again, and hopefully the tups, and hopefully bigger numbers of tups. Next slide. So yeah, that's it. That's just a frosty morning in lambing time. But yeah, that's it from me. If there's any questions, you can put them on.
Thomas, thank you very much. He's very bashful there, yeah. If anybody of you've been to Pendle, you'll see it's a phenomenally run farm, and the improvements you made are well worth seeing and a real good blueprint for other people. You also failed to mention you've got a pretty useful British Blue herd, haven't you? From those trophies behind you there.
I did mention it at the start.
Yeah, so the Hartleys are really, really good functional blue cattle. So although they've got the conformation and the balance, they're really well structured and mobile, which is nice to see. So I think you've taken that whole approach with those, with some of the blue texels you've bred over the years, and certainly on the commercial side. So you're stockmen and women through and through. And Thomas is also a phenomenal grassland farmer. So yeah, no, and obviously, you know, our cunning plan with all of this really is to see and to demonstrate to people in that area or in sort of north of England what can be done, and done in a very commercial way, pounds and pence and return on investment, because nobody's got money to burn these days. And then hopefully we can build a sale with you, Thomas, that sells the genetics you breed as much as anything else, because if they do a job for you there in Pendle, they'll do a job for lots of other people, won't they? So, we've got a few questions, which we'll probably just cover some of those off now very quickly. And then we'll come to Sam after, if that's okay. There is a question from Cormac on the chat there, going back really to tupping time, which is probably fresh in your mind. Almost in terms of your management around tupping time, what does it look like? You know, what's your tup to ewe ratios, mating groups, mob sizes, you rattle, etc.
Yes, so tupping the 20th of November. Depends on the flock basically. The Aberglans are all single sired, running into groups of last year there was running into 80s. And then basically we have three other flocks. There's a Highlander, the sheep that go to the Highlander, and then there's two separate lots of Aberglans. One lot of Aberglans was run as a 270 with 4 tups. And then the other group, I think they were split. So there was generally sort of like there isn't a tup that sees less than 50 ewes anyway. Generally between 50 and 100 ewes. So we don't raddle for 10 days, and then we raddle for 7, and then after 7 we change again, just for ease of management really. Some people, we sort of like nearly did debate not rattling for 17 days, but it's when you're riding around on the bike in lambing time, you can just say, oh well, I don't really need to look at her because she's, you know, in the next week. So that's what we do to make it easier.
Yeah. And obviously you haven't scammed this year yet, but fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Ian Smith will come around in a jolly way and give you the good news, hopefully. One important comment that Thomas made was breeding replacements at home, and we found that in our nucleus up in Hoyk as well, that when we breed our replacement ewe lambs, stroke yearlings, and we grow them out on the farm, I don't send them away on tack. They acclimatize, gives us the ability to pull away, you know, things that aren't thriving all through the winter. And it does seem to make quite a big difference. In fact, our yearlings in Southfield this year scanned equal to the aged ewes, which is some going really for them. So again, I think, Thomas, you've pretty much cottoned on to that you're keeping those replacements, a big number of them, you're running them over winter, you're actually chipping away at them and you're making them work for the living. So they're pretty solid sheep going forward, aren't they?
Mm. Yeah, I think, well, we've been lambing quite a few as ewe lambs. I know you don't at Southfield. But really, yeah, putting the pressure on them. Some of them do take it fairly hard as shearlings, but definitely making them into better ewes when they get to the 2, 3 crop ewes. They're definitely a lot better sheep.
Yeah. And we've got a question in terms of the fencing and the planting, because you put a rack of stuff in. Has that been done through environmental greening sort of grants or not? How have you worked your way around all of that?
Yeah, so um, everything's been done on the schemes that was there. We don't have it. We don't have anybody on our farm do any contracting. Everything is done in-house. So there's, like I say, there's me, Dad, and then I have one person 1 day a week comes and works for me. So yeah, every bit of fencing has been done on his own back. And yeah, through the CS, basically countryside stewardship, mid-tier, and now I've gone into SFI because of the herbal layer payment. But yeah, no, everything's been done. A lot of it's been done through grants, and but yeah, no, everything's been done by ourselves.
And how sensible has that discussion been in terms of getting the hedgerows and the planting where you want them? In other words, to add value to the farm. Have you managed to work that in the way you'd like it to be or not?
Yeah, definitely. Sort of like I said before, that a lot of the boundaries was already there, as in visual to be there, but the fences and hedges wasn't there.
Mhm.
So we put a lot, put all them back in. Even some of them was there, and we've coppiced and gone and planted between. But yeah, it's made a massive difference to the farm. The main of them now have got to like 3 years old, so they're over the height of a fence, and it really does pay at lambing time.
Mhm. And how much effort goes into managing those then in terms of keeping them right, the hedgerows and the planting? Are you having to put a lot of effort into keeping things straight or not?
Yeah, quite a bit. Usually we'd end up getting hit with. Sometimes there's been a drought, hasn't there, in April or May?
Yeah.
And usually the same as the lad that comes 1 day a week. He spent 3 weeks consecutively watering them.
Okay.
So just to keep them alive, the massive investment, sort of like one year, 10,000 trees, it's
Yeah.
£10,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he was just sucking water for 3 weeks and 3 days, basically consecutively, sucking water and watering them. So
But it's an important fact, isn't it, that if we put this infrastructure in and we get grants to do it, which is great, then it doesn't stop there, does it? It's actually looking after that investment, which I
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
not happening about the place quite often.
Yeah. So all the uh, trees that we put in, we tube them all because we have a lot of hairs, and hairs are just they'll just cut them off like a secateurs. So everything has to be tubed, which is even more of an investment if you tube on your cane. Um, but yeah, no, we'd look after them. We'd spray around them in spring, spray all the grass off around them, and basically try and get them to grow as fast as we can. We sort of like know what tree will grow now.
Yeah.
We've done before where we've had bigger trees, sort of like 40 centimeters plus, and they just didn't grow. So we've gone back to 20s. So they're really young and they hit our ground and they do grow. It's sort of like the massive shock when they get to 40 centimeters. They're generally 2 to 3 years old, and then they get a massive shock of hitting our soil and they just stop growing. So we're trying to get them as young and naive as possible, and then they'll hit our. Once we put them in, they generally do grow. So
Yeah. Come on. That's brilliant. So, look, we'll leave it there for a minute and we'll move to Sam, but I'm sure if there's any questions that come on, Cormac has put a comment there saying that Cormac runs an easy care flock and he'd never go away from shedders ever again. So that's endorsement, Thomas, that you're on the right track, obviously. So, and just to give you a bit of a background, Thomas's easy cares, Thomas's shedders or aberglans. A glan is clean in Welsh, by the way, as in clean lines and So that's Aberglan where he comes from. Some people call them shedders, some people call them all sorts, but it's based really on easy cares and explainer genetics into our Aberfield populations, and in Thomas's case, from a very good base of Logie-Derner cross ewes that he'd already transitioned over. So he'd already created a pretty functional flock, to be fair, hadn't you, with the Logie-Derner sheep?
Yeah.
So we're also taking advantage of the fact that there was good, solid, well-conformed sheep, but then we can take the wool off and get that functionality working. So yeah, so which is why there's probably a bit more timber in those sheep than what people would be used to when they look at shedders. And that's part of the plan, really, is to create, sheep that will actually give us the benefits of with shedding genetics, but we still have something that gives you a pretty decent carcass and that actually gives you the outputs. Not that the other breeds don't, because they're all there for a purpose. So, yeah. Right, we'll move on to Sam, if that's okay, Sam.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you, Thomas, after if there's questions, which I'm sure there will be. So, thank you. Sam, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Will you turn me off then?
Try and get it. There we go. Yeah, so hello. I'm Sam Edwards down in Dorset here. Some of you might know me, so I'm also on the Innovis sales team. So I cover Central and Eastern England. Yeah, so some of you may have met me already. So I run Edwards Farming Partnership. So I run Edwards Farming Partnership. So this is our sheep farming business with my wife Samantha and our 3-year-old little boy called George. We're both new entrants into farming. So I have no background in farming whatsoever. And my wife, her dad was an agricultural engineer, so that was sort of limited. So we're graziers. We have no formal tenancies. We have 14 landlords, generally on seasonal grazing licenses. A lot of them would be from sort of the 15th of March through to the 15th of October. That's just sort of how it's worked out. So yeah, we're based in Dorset in the southwest. We set up the business in 2021. Before that, we just had a few sheep. I think we got up to about a couple hundred. It was a hobby. I started out in sheep with 12, and it's just grown and grown. And then we were playing around with the 200 mark for a couple of years, and then we started building it then. When we first set up the business, we were autumn lambing Poll Dorsets. We were autumn lambing a good few hundred in October, trying to get all lambs away for the Easter market, which worked really quite well. Right up until the point where flea beetle started becoming a real issue with stubble turnips. We were really reliant on stubble turnip crops to push lambs on. And then we were also concentrate feeding the lambs to push them hard to get that Easter trade. And the price of concentrates also shot up, coinciding with the failing stubble turnip crops. So it sort of wasn't economical to do. We were looking at the prices of hogs at the same time as selling our season lamb, and there wasn't much difference in it really, especially for a grass-fed lamb. We became breeding partners for Innovis at the end of 2023, and last year we won New Entrant of the Year 2024 at the British Farming Awards in October. The business, yeah, so we run 830 ewes now. That's what went to the top this year. There is 125 replacement females. Of the 830 ewes that went to the top, 400 are fully performance recorded ewes for Innovis. So the ewes we're breeding rams from. And then there's 430 commercial ewes producing prime lambs, and some females. Over half of those are Highlanders. We sort of the rest would be Dorsets. We came to the Highlanders. I was contract dipping and seeing Highlanders out on farm really doing, good rearing percentages, later on in the season when I was dipping them. And that's sort of what got us started in looking at Innovis, and actually the Highlander was working for us. So for a commercial view, it was perfect. We had, yeah, on our grazing licenses, we're doing about 350 acres of grass grazing. Probably a third of that is year round. The rest is all, I say, the March to October, which we can manage quite well in our area. So we're a big arable area here in Dorset. So from October onwards, we do 1,000+ acres of arable cover crops. So typically go there at the end of October or the mid-October, depending on when grazing licenses are ending, and then we are mid-Feb, generally speaking, we're on them till, although this year it's been a bit wet for the last couple of weeks, so we're still on now. And then with the uptake of some of the SFI bird strip mixes and things like that, they're drilling them in a bit later in March. So yeah, we still got a good few hundred ewes out on cover crops now, as well as some rams. We have a small scale beef enterprise, and when I say small scale, it really is small. There would only be 15 head total. Generally speaking, that's because one of the blocks of ground, the landlord used to have cattle and he still wants cattle. But if we have the beef there, then we can also have sheep there. So that's sort of why we do it. They are also quite a good management tool as well, in terms of worms and using them in a rotation. And then we're growing rams as well for Innovis. So we're a ram grower. So this winter we've got around 300 tups. Or we've had around 300 tups in. 150 of those went back to another breeding partner last week. But they come in November just to try and help us utilize as much of the arable cover crops in the area as we can. So our system aims, and I suppose these are aims of most farming businesses, ones that want to make money. So we're forage fed. That's the key. Efficiency, that's a big aim for us. Not just ewe efficiency, that's really important, but also our workload efficiency. 14 landlords were spread out across a vast area. So we temporary land association, everything from where we are. So and then we're working in a 10-mile radius from here. So we can be, 20 miles from one block of ground to the other. So yeah, efficiency really is one area we really try and work on, because generally speaking, things can be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and we try and minimize that as much as we can. That then also leads on, to productivity. Productivity is really important. Quite hard on culling for any reason. Basically, if we've got to be handling them, over and above what we normally would, then we don't really want them here. Trying to maximize financial output isn't everybody, but we're always looking for ways to try and maximize that. Working with arable farmers, trying to keep them happy, but also trying to keep us happy. The arable cover crops really have to work for both parties. It can be a bit of work. Some are easier than others. Some we're shifting fences every couple of days, and some we're shifting fences weekly. But generally, if you can get it to work for both of you, then it's worth doing. And to build a resilient business, we don't claim any subsidy or any grants or anything, because the landlords do, and that doesn't generally get passed on to us. So we're trying to build a resilient business all the time. The challenges, if only it was always just the odd day of snow like that, which is pretty rare down here. Logistics, I've already just touched on that. 14 landlords across West Dorset, trying to make sure all the kit and the sheep are in the right place. That really, so from lambing onwards, well, from now, we're trying to get sheep dotted around to the right blocks of ground, which will then mean that there's minimal movement when we get to weaning and through then to the next tupping season. We don't always get that right, and sometimes we do have to go in and move sheep. You might have to move them 10 miles, but generally speaking, we're getting pretty good at trying to get them in the right area. So this year, actually, we managed to really hit the jackpot for us, and managed to tie up 4 different blocks of ground, which went for about 2.5 miles, but we managed to walk sheep rather than trailer them this year, which really just helps. You're moving groups of 400, you can just walk them, a couple miles rather than trailering them. It's the difference between an hour walking them and 8 hours of hauling them. So yeah, logistics is a big thing. We have no buildings or a yard. We have just grazing only. So that is quite the challenge. Yeah, so at lambing time last year, we put up 2 marquees, 12 by 6 marquees in the corner of a little compound that we managed to rent off of somebody. And that was, generally speaking, we were trying to just use that for problems. But with how wet it was last year, a few more sheep went through there than we wanted. Yeah, we're graziers. It's in the name. We just graze. That's all we do. We just go around just grazing. Differing grazing platforms, that's quite a challenge. Some of it's meadows, some of it's rough ground, some of it's steep that you can't get a quad on. Some of it's in like higher level stewardship where there's certain stocking rates, and we can't graze it too hard. So yeah, it's just trying to manage all that, and manage it within the confines of what you've got there. Especially with stocking rates, you can't have too many and then find you need to be hauling them away because it's just taking money out of the job. Labour, we did try with somebody last lambing, and she was really, really good at lambing, and she's actually coming back this lambing. We desperately wanted to take her on for a day a week after lambing last year, but it's just hard. We were finding we end up having to pay her a lot of time just sat in the truck, just talking to us, driving around, rather than if we had a yard or somewhere we could leave her back there to do some jobs around the yard, but we can't. We just have to jump in the truck and she just has to sit there for half an hour. So yeah, that's a bit of a challenge for us. And the same at lambing. We're so spread out, we'll be lambing over 5-6 different locations. So yeah. Trace elements, that is a big challenge for us we found in the last year or so, especially with grazing a lot of the arable cover crops. We get quite a lot of lockup, iodine being a big one. We had one block of ground that was arable that they had put into SFI herbal lays, which sounds marvelous, and the herbal lays do a good job. But after 40 years of pig slurry on it, we were really high in copper, which caused a few problems. Yeah, I suppose with trace elements, it's brilliant to test things, but and we do test, forage analysis and things, and blood tests use, but it's a ever-changing picture. No year is ever the same. Some years, generally speaking, we try and keep the ground we've got, and we do keep the ground we've got. But some years we'd gain more ground, and some years we'd give up some ground just if it's not working. So we did find we were focusing on it quite hard, and we went down quite a lot of testing a couple of years ago and spent a lot of money only to then go and give up the ground. So yeah, that's a constant challenge. Yeah, and we don't claim any government support, generally because the landlord is claiming the SFI, and then we're just working off the back of that. So the sheep, so the first bit is the performance recorders to the Innovis flock. So there's 160 Aberglan ewes, the shedder. I'm going to keep banging the drum on the shedder. Yeah, brilliant sheep. That's sort of how we got into it. There was the opportunity. Dewi spoke to us, and yeah, we took on a flock that they got out. Then we have 150 Abermax ewes. Again, there was another opportunity with a flock, so we had the ground. One thing we don't generally struggle with is finding ground, and we've just taken on a load more ground, so we took on the Abermaxes. That was back in 2023, along with the Aberglans, and then just this last tupping, so 24, we took on a Primera flock as well. So we're just starting out with those. And then on the commercial side, there's 230 Highlanders. In the first year they were going to Clins, and now then they've started going to Highlanders, and then this year they've gone to Highlanders, Abermaxes and Aberglans as well. So I suppose our longer term aim is to get everything shedding on the commercial side of it. Just for us, the Aberglan really works. Down to silly things about how many more you can get on a trailer in the middle of winter. Yeah, but then we still got 200 pole Dorsets. Every year we say we're going to get rid of the Dorsets, and we get round to sorting them out for tupping, and yeah, it's what we started with, and we just love them, and we're in Dorset. So every year we stay around the 200 mark, although they're a bit awkward to manage in the fact that pole Dorsets don't particularly like electric fences. So yeah, on our system, they're probably going to have to go. So as you can see, we've got a variety of ewes. We like the variety. I know Thomas was talking about how, he wants to produce a consistent lamb, and we'd love to do that as well. And we try and produce as consistent lamb between the different flocks. But ultimately, we have to have different sheep to suit different grazing platforms and different scenarios, which I should have added on there. Like the Aberglan, the shedder is really good for blocks of ground that are a bit further away or a bit more awkward to pen up on, or things like that, from a shearing point of view. Yeah, we found a couple of years ago, we were just lugging all around after shearing. The shearing bit isn't the issue, it's then going around and collecting up all the wool and getting it back. Yeah, so things like that, the Aberglan does suit that. Yeah, some pictures. So in the frost. So that's grazing grazing oilseed rapes. We do a bit of that, and then the big one just sort of shows how exposed we are here in Dorset. Dorset's very rolling hills. That where that picture is taken is 800 feet, believe it or not, in Dorset. And we're only 10 miles from the coast, and that would be the highest point from the coast. So yeah, we get quite a lot of the Atlantic storms roll into us. Wintering. So yeah, as I said, we do 1,000+ acres of cover crops, going on to them in October. That really is a big part of our business. And actually, without the cover crops, we wouldn't be able to do what we do at the level we're doing it at. If we were solely relying on the grass, we'd only have 300 sheep, I expect. So yeah, that is huge. We're part of the Poole Harbour catchment, and that's sort of where the cover crops really came from in the first instance. So Wessex Water were paying arable farmers in the area to grow cover crops, to try and stop like nutrient leaching. So they were being paid by Wessex Water, and then Wessex Water were more than obliging to have them grazed, because actually what we found and what Wessex Water found was that by grazing these cover crops, it kept them growing longer and better root structure in the soil. And then with the SFI really taking off, yeah, the arable cover crops are just growing. Now I think they're onto 3 species, which works quite well. In the first couple years, it was just sort of 1 species. We did a lot of just fodder radish, which the sheep do really well on. But actually they're doing better now. Now we've got like the likes of vetch in them. There is Phacelia in them. Some people say the sheep won't touch it. I seem to touch it, and they seem to do quite well. Well, it's probably the mix, but it's something else. Sheep are browsers, so yeah, it's quite good for them. Yeah, and we're doing stubble turnips still, as and when we can get them. So we have one arable farmer that will put in between 100 and 150 acres of stubble turnips. That's behind wheat crops, so just depending on the harvest and when and the date of harvest and the date of drilling depends on how good the crop is. Actually, this year is probably the best year we've had for stubble turnips for a good time. So we've got a load of fat lambs on there, just finishing now, ready for Ramadan. Sometimes we'll graze cereal crops and oilseed rape just to help out. So oilseed rape when it gets too far ahead, by grazing it out, then the arable farmer can go in and spray the curb, and the curb can hit the soil where it needs to be. And for cereal, just grazing out any disease in the leaves during the winter, and then the crop comes back really well in the spring. We also do an additional 250 acres of grass in the winter months. So that's with 2 beef farms. One that I do a bit of relief work on in exchange for grass. That'd be about 150 acres. And then there's another one right on the 10-mile limit for our TLAs, that right down on the coast, but it's all stock fenced. So it's quite good in that respect. And then, yeah, generally speaking, we try and tap on the grass and then go on to the crops then. We store a lot of lambs over into the late winter. So we'll be drawing lambs from weaning, and then we do lambs from weaning through to end of September. And then the focus shifts into just sorting ewes out. Just because of the nature of our system and how spread out we are, actually sorting ewes does take quite a bit of time. Because they're dotted around everywhere, and then we try and get them out everywhere and get them to good grass. So yeah, the focus shifts, and then by the time we start getting into November, December, we just will hang on until January, February, and try and make use of any price lift. So we still got about 450 lambs left at the moment. We started sending some on this morning. And then, in the winter, also, I've already mentioned, we have the 300 rams in for growing. So in the winter, 80% of the sheep are behind fences. That is my life from October through to March. So we run a John Deere Gator fencing, and then with a wrapper and all wrapper fencing, and we just go around and just fence. We were roading it everywhere, but now we've got a trailer for that to try and make things more efficient. So that's sort of what I get up to. Changing practices. Whilst we've sort of been improving genetics, we've also been improving what we do. So we've gone into mob and rotational grazing where we can. I'm a big fan of electric fences and handrails. You can do quite a lot with a handrail, and you can grow a lot more grass with a handrail. So we'll try and mob up ewes and lambs into groups of about 150 ewes and lambs, and then rotationally graze them. Generally, last year we were splitting up into about 3-acre paddocks and then moving them every couple of days. That was after lambing. We just found that worked quite well. We do in-house feck testing. We started doing that last year. That's been a game changer, actually, just being able to do it ourselves, as well as a huge cost saving. Actually, our vet practice is somewhere around 12 or 13 pound a test. So when you're doing pre and post drench testing, it soon starts adding up. So actually just doing it in-house. And the other thing we found is, we can go to a block, and if we think we need to test them, we just get the sample, test them, and then if they need treating, we can do it all, within one morning sort of thing. We started doing consultancy with our vet, so we do use our vet quite a bit, but not for medical sort of things. So we're on a sort of consultancy package, which we found really, really good. So she comes out basically once a quarter for a whole morning, and we can choose what the topic is that morning. And she's at the other end of the phone. So yeah, we really value the relationship with our vet, actually. And we've found that actually by working closer with her, everything's improving. A big change last year was we went to hot iron tailing through a tailing chute. We were finding we were getting quite high instances of joint ill, and that was because of crows in the area. When we were ringing the crows were just trying to pull the tails off before they properly were ready to drop off, and then we were getting a lot of joint ill. So last year we went down the hot iron route, and yeah, just brilliant. From an efficiency point of view at lambing, we're just going around lambing, doing iodine, recording what we need to record, and then leaving them to it. And then we don't touch them again then until they're 4 or 5 weeks old, when they go down the chute and they get heptavac, a wormer, tagging on the commercials, and yeah, tailed at the same time. And I was a bit hesitant before we started it. I thought it might be a bit painful for the lambs, but no, they just come off the chute and just carry on. Oh, and the other thing we do through the chute is fly spray as well. And then yeah, on there, rolling out shedding genetics into the commercial flock. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the shedder over the Highlander is going to do. And I suppose that's our 5-year plan, is just to have the whole commercial flock into using Aberglan tups over whatever there is. We might try a few shedders on the Dorsets and just see what happens. So yeah, we've scanned for this year. So we lamb in April to try and coincide that with grass growth. So the commercials, we're really pleased with the Highlanders. The Highlanders were just back slightly this year at 187%, but actually really that's a much more manageable number. Last year we were just over the 200. So just by knocking it back, there's just a few less triplets, which is just going to really help. The Dorsets were a bit below this year, but we struggled to get them away. So from weaning, a lot of the ewes go up onto some rough old hill, and we just struggled to get the Dorsets away this year, so they were slightly back. Then on the Innovis flock, the Primaras, yeah, 187%, really pleased with that. The Abermax is at 161, again, really pleased. And the Aberglans, 185% for an outdoor lambing ewe. It's just, yeah, right where we want it. And actually, I think that the pleasing thing this year was the barren rate, which was, yeah, just under 3%, and the average body condition score of 3.5 across the whole flock. And I suppose a lot of that comes down to the cover crops, just quality food in front of clean quality food in front of them from October right through. They're never hungry. Although they have been quite hungry this winter. We've covered some ground. Yeah, they've always got access to food. So why are we breeding with Innovis? Because we met Dewi and got chatting. Innovis really suits what we're trying to achieve. We feel performance in different circumstances, and what we're finding actually, and what we found with the Highlander was that the Highlander for us was performing everywhere that we put it, whether that was on good lays or some not so good lays, older permanent pasture, they were still performing. And the Aberglans, equally probably I would say actually the Aberglans have probably got the edge. They just hold condition brilliantly. It doesn't matter where you put them, what you throw at them, what the weather is. Even when they're fully shed, they just hold the edge. We have a keen interest in genetics. I suppose that comes down to us trying to build a resilient business and having to make money. Yeah, the use of genetics is just really helping with that. The ram growing, with that growing side of things, is just utilizing crops, and that just helps us. It helps us to keep the arable farmers happy as well. So yeah, thanks for watching.
Thank you, Sam. I think it's obvious to the people on the call that why we work with you two, in terms of the attention to detail and the effort you put into everything. We were down with Sam MOTing some rams. Was it last week, Sam?
Yeah, that's my
Dear
bit.
God, the rushing around that you do and the setting up and the pulling down, and that was just a fairly straightforward day for you, wasn't it?
Yeah,
But
the kit gets fairly abused.
it's not for the light-hearted. Sam, I suppose one of the questions, because we've got a heap of questions for both of you in the Q&As, but one, just while we're on that, is that it's quite demanding physically what you do in terms of the running around and stuff. Is it a long-term aim, or what if you had your wish list of what you would have to make your life and your business easier, what would that be, do you think?
So we've looked at going down like council farm routes, trying to get a tenancy, but actually what we have found is that this is the cheapest way to do what we're doing. Because of the nature of grazing licenses, our average rent price would be really quite low compared to most. Okay, some of that then gets bumped up in fuel, but actually fuel and rent combined wouldn't be more than £60 an acre when we worked it out last. And then the arable cover crops, they can be as cheap or as expensive as you want, really. With the SFI and what people are getting paid, there is scope to not be paying very much for it. It all comes down to how desperately you want it, and competition in the area. That's the other thing we found. And even down to the arable farms management and what they want. So, like I said, we've got one that wants fences shifting every couple of days in smaller blocks and targeting areas of the field that they know are hungry and they want some more fertility. And then we've got others that just want us to fence right round the outside and just chuck the sheep in and leave them for 2 weeks.
Oh.
So yeah, that then gets reflected in the price and what we pay. So it's quite a cheap system.
But you seem to spend a lot of time, I was amazed that when we were down with you, Samantha was busy. You'd just been to buy some garden centre vouchers for somebody, hasn't she? Because she'd had a breakout and you were actually giving that to somebody. It
Yeah,
just shows the level of attention you go to actually manage people's expectations and cooperation.
Yeah, so a lot of it comes down to the relationships you build and how much you want it as well. We try and have a zero tolerance for sheep getting out, but occasionally they do. If we get a problem group, the first thing we do is we go and scoop them up. The problem one's up. We wait until they've broken out and got as far away as they're going to get away from the rest of the flock, and then we round them up and we get them away.
Yeah.
And then if the time that you're talking about, they got into the garden and started eating a rose. And that's on one of our biggest blocks of cover crops, so we sort of need it. So it's just small things, it doesn't cost much. That garden centre voucher then goes a long way.
Yeah. And I suppose, Sam, is that
happy.
the difference between you being the preferred grazier, getting that land every year and not, I suppose, does it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's just keeping those relationships. So we try and go around. So we've pulled off most of them now. So we'll go around in the next couple of weeks and settle up, and then we try and drop in a couple of times through the summer months. We try and drop in May, June, just because they're thinking about what mixes they're putting in, and just try and steer them in the right direction to what mixes we want, and then we'll speak to them again during harvest. And generally, it's just asking how harvest is, and just so you can gauge when the crops are going in the ground, and it's just point of contact is quite good. It just keeps them.
That's really good, and it's really happening to see, isn't it, that somebody from a non-farming background can actually get into a sheep farming business like this with a lot of hard work and dedication and thought, admittedly, but you're not new entrants against odds for any reason, are you, in terms of winning that? So well done you. So
thank you.
There's quite a few questions here on lambing, so whilst it's about to come around for you all, I suppose. I think Cormac's asking here, what's the average birth weight of the Aberglan, twin singles, and new mature weight? I'm not quite sure that you'll know the mature weight probably, Sam, will you?
Yeah, that'd be about the 65 kilo mark. I think it's just a sniff under.
Yeah.
The
So again, I suppose, Thomas, your ewes are slightly bigger. So generally speaking, mature wise, they're just playing over the 60 mark normally, aren't they, Sam? So
yeah.
in terms of lamb weights, I know that the systems level sits between 1% and 2% normally, but I'm not sure that you've done any birth weights last year, did you, Sam?
Yeah, we did some. So they were coming out. I think our average birth weight was 4.4 on the twins. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Cool.
So, yeah. So, and your level of assistance, Thomas, would be about the same?
Yeah, I think was it 2%? Is it on the thing? Yeah, 2%. I say we didn't do any birth weights.
Yeah.
So
On the back of that sort of question as well, we've got Ben here from Bolton asking, how on earth do you record these sheep outside, Sam? And I suppose Thomas as well afterwards. When you're doing recording outside for keeping tabs on these things. So if I start with Sam.
With a huge headache. And type no. So we use XR5000 box now and True Test wand. This year we're just going down DNA parentage. So we'll be just recording problems at birth and then assigning the parentage through DNA to try and make life easier. 400 performance recorded users, a lot of work. A couple hundred last year was enough work for one person all the time, making sure you're all up together with everything. So that's sort of how we're doing it at lambing time.
I think Thomas's eyes lit up there when you just said that and looked towards Izzy or I suspect, in terms of that. So, just to give you an idea, people, we DNA parentage quite a lot of the sheep flocks. It works at about 15 quid a sample to get each individual you've done and the sires, and then the lamb crop is done every year. It's really useful for us because it gives us also, we've got genomic breeding values that are being built up. So it gives quite a lot of additional information these days about some quite important traits and accuracy of traits, especially with some of the more difficult to manage traits. So I think, Sam, we're looking to DNA sample your whole flock, are we?
Yeah.
Now for this year?
Yeah. So, and then with that, that's enabled us to mob mate rather than single sire mating. Just helps at tapping time, really. And then we use ram lambs as well this year. Rather.
Yeah. So, Thomas, how do you do it now, and how would you like to do it?
yeah, no, it would be easier doing the DNA. It's just the expense, isn't it? But no, lambing time we just Izzy has me under strict rules that I have to colour mark every 3 days. So we colour mark in the lambs 3 days and then change every 3 days. And then when she collars me, I have to get them all in mother up, and then we go through and record them all through the True Test system. So last year was a bit of a nightmare because of the rubbish start that we had in lambing time of how wet it was. I was just trying to hold Izzy off for as long as possible, just so we wasn't messing with sheep basically, because it was just a bog here. The first 5 days of lambing time was like riding around on a boat, so sheep just needed to lamb and stay where they was for as long as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, some bit of work with the Innovis one, but
last year we did try spraying the numbers on the agar glands to try and record. So we were spraying the tag number on the side, but actually by the time we got to the middle point of lambing, they were shedding, and then you didn't actually have a number, or you had part of a number. So that was not a goer.
Too cold here for them to shed.
At least they're shedding.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But yeah. I've got a question here from Meg, who I think is in New Zealand, so she must be up early having her morning coffees, I suspect. Asking, how do you manage triplets? Do you pull one off? I suppose if you start with Sam, and we'll come to Thomas after.
Yeah, so we pull one off. If they're born in the morning, they stay on all day until last thing at night, and then we pull one off then, just so they get sufficient colostrum. If they're born in the evening, it's always we have tried in the past before to leave them on until the morning, but the predator issue around with us is too great. Generally speaking, a fox will end up with one, so we do lift it at dark and then give it artificial colostrum, regardless if it's had it or not. We top them all up in the evening.
And do you cross foster then, or do you use those up with other sheep?
Yes, then we foster them on as best as we can to anything else, because I really don't want too many pet lambs about the place.
Do you end up with pet lambs?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Some lambs just won't foster. some ewes will take a foster lamb and then she'll be fine with it for 24 hours, and then she'll reject it for whatever reason. And then we struggle to get that lamb back onto someone else. So yeah, we always end up with a few, and then there's there's always the odd few after, well, I say after turnout, but after lambing, because they're always out with problems that come back anyway. So yeah, we always end up with a handful.
And Thomas, how do you deal with your triplets?
Yeah, so we're taking them off. They're quite a good thing for the ewe lambs when the ewe lambs start. Generally have a few problems at the start, so they clean them up. Generally don't do too bad for triplets, really, as in numbers wise. But last year, we just put them in front of the twins pre-lambing on grass rotation. Didn't feed any concentrate, and yeah, didn't have much bother with them. They was fine, but yeah, no, we always take one off. We can't manage 3 lambs around here.
Fair enough. Yeah, we normally, Hamish in the nucleus has scanned 160 triplets this year, so we normally leave on until the part comes where they can cope. There is a big chunk of ewes that do cope all year, cope to rear, but we're still monitoring the impact on that ewe in terms of her lifetime performance. So we're just not sure yet in terms of that, but we do leave them on in the nucleus unless they're really falling behind. But that'll be a test this year with about 160 triplets scanned, so we'll see how that goes. It's more than normal. So there is a question here on the recording element of it in terms of if you had walled ewe lambs, and this is Josh asking the question, on non-shedding ewe lambs come lambing, would spraying a tag number on be an effective use of time, do you think? In terms of spraying the ewes, I suppose.
It can be. We've done it before, and it depends how well you spray the numbers and how. I quite like the sheep looking neat, so I tried spraying the numbers on quite small, but then when it rained, they all merged. Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't go back down that route, unless you were going to assign them a management number starting at 1.
Yeah, you can get the big management tags, and there's a lot of Kiwi systems that will use a management tag that it won't have necessarily the big run of the use fully ID in, it'll just have a 1 to whatever number she is. So you're giving her effectively a management tag in here that is normally 2 big tags that they will get stuck in fences over here because we don't have the straight wire fences quite the same as we have in New Zealand. But hopefully with good maternal selection, you can get away with, those management tags and get close enough to them to do that if they're good maternal sheep as well, I think. But yeah, lots of different ways, different systems, isn't there, with it all. The DNA takes a huge amount of work out, without a question. Helps with multiple sire matings, so you don't have to have single sire mating groups and sheep running out of feed and stuff and rams going wrong. But it comes at a cost, obviously. So, but that's the gold standard, but it comes with a cost, doesn't it? So, so I think the answer there, Josh, was that, yeah, spraying the numbers. We know quite a few of the Welsh sheep genetics flocks that do spray numbers on them, but they're normally quite big. Generally, we've seen people color code as well. We've done that for experiments before now, where they actually have a color system, like a barcode system, where they actually have a color on 3 lines, and they color code based on that. And they go all the way around the sheep, so you can see them from either side, but that's a bit harsh in terms of the use of spray cans and the wool. But yeah, some people spray, get away with it, get on quite well. Some people have big tags. Some people do the sort of the drifting out like Thomas and Izzy do. And some people go whole hog like Sam's going into DNA. And maybe even Thomas and Izzy down the line, I suppose. So, yeah. And in terms of the triplets there for management, just to recap, both Sam and Thomas are taking them off because they value getting 2 good lambs reared on those ewes and getting those sheep moving. We keep a third on sometimes, but we're not quite sure of its impact on the productive life of that ewe as a consequence, really. There's a question there for Thomas, back to crops, really. How heavy do you graze the turnips that are direct drilled into, are they direct into grass, and what's done post-grazing, tillage, etc.? I think you might have mentioned what you do afterwards, Thomas, but just give us an idea on how heavily you graze the crops. Obviously, less so this year because of lighter crop. But
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd read that before. I don't know whether he thought that we was direct drilling turnips and grass together, but we're not. I have tried it, but I didn't really rate it. So we're drilling the it's swede, turnip, and kale off Watson seeds. So we're burning off the basically what is being permanent pasture, burning it off and direct drilling straight in, and then using the sheep really as a tool to sort of cultivate the ground really. Some of the pieces that we've been doing, they haven't been touched for like 100 years. It's really old ground that we're going through, like virgin ground nearly. So we're using the sheep as a tool as cultivating. This year it isn't working because it's too dry.
Yeah.
So, and then come spring, when it is supposedly it should be black, but it isn't. We have what is a rotor spike. It's not a rotavator. It sort of is a rotavator, but they're on the spikes, so you don't produce a pan underneath. So we're tilling it with that.
and do you get a lot of volunteers and weeds through that without turning again, Thomas? Or are you okay with it?
No, generally I've been fine. So we're trying not to spray off again in spring with glyphosate. We're trying to just use the rotavator
Yeah.
to do it. Generally depends on what the field is like. If the field's fairly good, we'll spray off and just go direct again. But if the field's rough and we're sort of trying to get as much ground as possible mowable. So when we're grazing in summer, if a piece is getting away, we can just shut the gate and then take it off for silage, basically. But yeah, no, and then go ahead and straight in with a direct drill. Generally followed by herbal layers, although we have done some quite heavy clover mixes. And I'm desperate.
And when you're in the autumn and you're putting the turnips in, you're spraying off with glyphosate, obviously with Roundup. Are you grazing 10 days later right down before you drill, or does it matter if there's any sort of residue before you drill, or you're just drilling straight through, are you?
Yeah, we're trying to graze it as hard as we can pre-spraying.
Yeah.
Some people like grazing it after, but I can't get my head around it. And some people will mow it for silage as well, which is I've bailed some for somebody that was sprayed off, and it was just
Yeah.
like snot. So we're trying to get as much off as we can before we spray, then spray, then drill.
Yeah, well,
We've tried all sorts with the drill. I've sprayed stuff one night and drilled the day after, and then done quite a lot with my agronomist, trialing different ways of doing half sprays, stuff like that, which has it's been good.
Yeah, I must admit we've had really good results with the Guttler drill. There's a contractor here, but I think we get good results because he's a very good operator, and I think that's part of it. And I think you're the same, Thomas. You spend a lot of time getting calibration right and stuff. And it seems to be the secret, with this kit is that if you do it right, you get really good results. But if you don't, then it's a bit more haphazard, like everything.
Yeah, the conditions just have to be perfect, nearly.
Yeah. And do you have a front press on it as well? Do you have a front press on the?
Yeah.
So you can actually tilt up as well in one pass, yeah?
Yeah, so the picture in the PowerPoint was that was like rotavated ground, so I didn't need the front harrow on, with the front harrow flex. But when we're going straight into sward, we put the front harrow flex on just for trying to maximize seed to soil contact, which is the biggest thing, really.
Yeah. Just for completeness, we've got one last question, which I think you've covered, Sam, to some degree, but again, with the different soil types, again, Cornwall asking the mineral plan in place with bollicing, I think you've covered it on the fact that you make a best laid plan and then you lose the land. But, are you using boluses? Bucket? What are you using currently?
So we're now using AgriWise buckets and the AgriWise drench. So we use the AgriWise drench just before tapping, just to give them a boost, and then the buckets. So our plan this year is to target we're going to start just analysing the grass at different blocks that we sort of know are quite secure, and then trying to get buckets formulated for those. But that's about the best we can do. We did try bolusing. I just didn't feel it was doing what we wanted it to do.
And I suppose we've had good results. We use that approach in a number of farms where we quite often work with AgriWise, although other companies I'm sure do it, and with Chris Williams, where we actually do forage analysis of what the sheep are grazing. And actually we get them to actually do a bespoke bucket, quite often dealing with some of the antagonists and stuff, because that's half the problem, isn't it? You might have a soil analysis that's fine in terms of some of the minerals, but actually got antagonists that are locking up. So yeah, we seem to get quite good results as well, actually tailoring that bucket, and quite often they cost exactly the same, but you're not giving things that you don't need, and you are giving the elements that are required. So
yeah,
and
so we are selenium deficient here. We will, if we don't supplement selenium, we will see white mussel disease.
Yeah.
And yeah, cobalt as well. And the other big thing is iodine, because of all the root crops on the cover crops.
Yeah. And while we're on it, Thomas, how do you deal with minerals and supplements up with you?
Yeah, so we was using boluses, and then our first trip to Southfield, we met Chris Williams, and then we changed. Basically, he sent me some soil forage samples. We did the forage samples, and then we've never bolused since. Through the ewes that we're running, generally using about 2 ton of buckets a year. So it's not a massive expense, and yeah, they take them as they please. They're there all the time. It can flux and change really. Like generally at the minute they're not even touching them, and then they'll go through a phase and they'll really take them. So it's shows that if you're just giving a bolus once a year, you're not actually giving it at the right time. So now we've like the buckets, yeah, they're doing the job.
And one last question has just come in, and we'll close it after this, guys. So Sam is asking to Sam Williams asking, how many miles of electric fencing does poor Sam think he has? I added a poor Sam because I
I don't know, I don't want to know. Yeah, we got a lot. We probably don't have as much as we could really do with. At times we find we're a bit tight.
And how are you powering, Sam? Are you solar or batteries? Do people
so we've got one solar unit that we will carry on buying solar units. We do quite like those. In the winter, the solar units will keep going for 2 to 3 weeks, as opposed to just a battery for 5 days. But in the summer, because we're on fences all year round, generally, the solar units will go all summer.
Okay.
Yeah,
do you get stuff nicked or not?
Touch wood, no.
Oh well, see.
Yeah, we've actually found some of our best fences are just some of the small little ones now, because the sheep are so used to electric. So actually, we don't have to spend vast amounts of money on fences now.
And you always on 3 strands, or will you go single if they're trained?
No, generally speaking, we're on 2 strands. Lambs we have to put on 3.
And Dorset's 10 by the sound of it.
Yeah. The Dorsets we try we try and keep the Dorsets on stock fence fields as best as we can, just because yeah, they're a nightmare.
Well, look, on that jovial note, we're on 9 o'clock, so we're really, really grateful for both of you, and for everybody else for linking in. We really appreciate you coming in and listening to what our guys have to say. And as I've said before, both Sam and Thomas, really, really thank you for this evening, just to give us an insight into what you're about. And Thomas, obviously, people are more than welcome to come and see what you're doing in that sale that we're going to have in September again.
Yep.
So normally we have a bit of a look round as well as actually the sheep, don't we? So it's a great way for people to see, how to transition. And Sam, you will be running up and down the country like a yo-yo, selling sheep through the summer and farming flat out the other time. And obviously Izzy doing that with Thomas as well there. So, but yeah, no, thank you ever so much, all of you. And we'll call it quits for tonight. I think we do have one, the last webinar, a fortnight tonight, where we're going to be talking about genetics or not. So we've got Janet, and I think we've got Vic Ballantyne, and we're going to actually be talking about breeding sheep fit for purpose across the globe and actually understanding what is genetic and what isn't. So yeah, tune in fortnight from tonight for the next and last installment for this year then. So other than that, thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.